Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining the Data Legends podcast today. If you haven't tuned in and this is your first time visiting us, this is a podcast that we've been running, hosted by Chaos Search, really focused on gaining perspective from data legends, IT leaders in all sorts of industries who talk a little bit about the highs and lows of what they're seeing in the industry, leading teams today, and driving successful outcomes. And today we are thrilled to have Ahmed Munir here as our guest in our session this afternoon. And Ahmed, let's start with just sharing with the audience a little bit about your background. What's your really lens in terms of experience, and what sort of role are you in today?
First of all, thanks, Courtney, for having me. It's my pleasure to be, discussing all fun and cool things about the data analytics and the emerging technologies.
We're glad you're
I'm
here, so thank you for that. Anyway, you go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm currently working as enterprise lead architect at Whirlpool Corporation, which is a home appliance-based manufacturing company. And I have been into SAP industry for almost 15 plus years now. Worked for several different Fortune 500 companies, and have been kind of challenged in always an interesting, working environment. Fun things along the lines of SAP integration and data analytics. So I'm glad to share some of my experience.
Oh, absolutely. All topics we care a lot about around here. There's no shortage of change and innovation happening in the analytics space. Actually, we were out at an Amazon event last week as we start to get back out to some of these in-person events. It's amazing to see how much constant innovation you see, not only from the Amazon community, but all those that are sponsoring, and the challenges that each of the attendees sort of put forth in terms of what they're looking to solve for. So I'm sure with your deep expertise in a whole lot of really large enterprises, you've seen your fair share of that, and some of it we'll cover today. So maybe we start with the macro trends. If you think about what are some of these macro trends that you're seeing when it comes to data and analytics that are really exciting to you, and why?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, Courtney, look, I think we have been living into, uh, but also we know that the digital transformation age, where there is abundance of data, and the organizations are really trying their best to get the best out of their available data. So think of like early 80s or 90s when there was a transformation in terms of implementing some ERP based systems like SAP, Oracle. That was the period when organizations were really trying to get into the enterprise resource planning based systems. Now, after 20 plus or 25 plus years, there's an abundance of data out there. Now the challenge is different. The challenge is really how to get the best out of your available data and get the meaningful consumer insights, right? And just over the last couple of years, all of us have been really challenged in terms of uh, looking into the things from a different perspective as well. So what it means is, the consumer behavior, the customer behavior has interestingly changed, not necessarily changed in a wrong way, but it has interestingly changed in a different direction. So now the organizations which were not even thinking about coming into the, let's say, D2C space, direct to consumer space, now they have been pretty much forced upon to, come with some sort of a new ways of interacting with the consumers, potential customers, and ultimately, increasing the business bottom line. Um, some of the things which are, noteworthy to watch out is maybe even if I pick up few things, intelligent decision making. One of the emerging trend is out there in terms of how do you, uh, you know, uh, bring some system of technology and make your people who are ultimately going to make the decision and combine the knowledge of the technology and the human power in terms of making the informed and hybrid intelligent decision making. So what we call or what we know of is, okay, AI, machine learning. Under the AI, you have the machine learning and the data science, quite nicely picked up. And that's one of the trend. If I talk about something in addition to that, how do you basically operationalize your business using some emerging technologies, like, again, artificial intelligence, machine learning, so and so forth? There is a cool, nice terminology out there in the industry. We are calling it XOps, which probably many of us may not have heard, because we have been almost hearing DevOps, DevSecOps, and like DevOps. But all those technologies typically talk about operationalizing the things, but from a business at the speed of light. No one is really talking about bringing all those individual components together under the umbrella of something which is more going to remove the redundancy within the process or within the IT as well, right? So business and IT come together, talking about removing any redundant steps from process is what XOps is all about. uh, and it's getting more exciting when we have some emerging trends out there, right? Like, how do you typically go and pretty much uh, automate those processes through some machine learning? Like, how do you allow your technology to learn from itself and operationalize it?
Yeah,
uh,
it's no small feat. The XOps concept is, whether it's DevOps, SecOps, it's ML ops, there's so much need for both efficiency and intelligence in each of the processes within an organization. It's no wonder that XOps as a topic is all, or as a function, is coming as something that people are paying attention to, because there's no shortage of opportunity to really condense this, like in an intelligent analytics scenario, like shortening this time frame from data to answers or insight, or however you want to place it. But it's complex. I mean, you have data coming from multiple sources. You have data, like you talked about, being in a direct to consumer model. We at Chaos Search, we're a B2B business, but people can use our trial anytime. We're all working in this very transparent lens of, no matter what your industry is, you're trying to expose your thing to consumers in a way that wasn't usually the norm, so it raises a whole bunch of other considerations and analytics opportunities for sure.
and I guess I would probably call it a chaos when it comes to the implementing at the speed of business. And let me tell you, some examples. Like, you went into Amazon conference as well. We are pretty much getting into the era of the cloud-based deployment, right? uh, and it used to be a time, and if I even look back of 10, 15 years ago, there was no as such the cloud-based modalities involved. And it was so easy for a programmer to make the changes in the dev environment and move it to the next environment, quality and the production, with some nuances associated with it, pretty much along the lines of what would be the impact of that individual component or the piece. Now, in the era of the cloud base, what is happening is you have so many different bits and pieces going together at the same time, and if one of the component is causing an issue, your rest of the component could not move. So it's more like, if you, I don't know, if anyone has drove like a 60s or 50s manual car, right? When the mechanic was so expert, if there is anything wrong in the vehicle, they just tap to the vehicle and they say, yeah, it's wrong because that component is wrong. It's so easy to really go and pinpoint the things. But with the advancement of the technologies and so many things, although we are saying that, yeah, the cloud based deployment would take less amount of time, it would take 2 minutes, or maybe let's bring down into one day of the deployment. But in practicality, I can say that it is becoming more convoluted, as the teams are trying to really comprehend if any of the individual component is not working. So the whole release cycle is supposed to go faster as compared to taking more time. So that's where the industry challenges out there, and that's where we have to really watch out some emerging technologies along those lines of XOps, advancement in the DevOps a little bit as well, to remove the anomalies quickly and in a faster way.
Yeah, no, it's a really good example, and it just reminds you that in any, and we'll talk about this actually in our next question, this concept of teams, but when any component isn't doing its job, the impact to the organization, to the software delivery, to the team, to anything is pervasive across the team. It's not isolated because so many of these actions today are condensed. And let's talk about that, or anything that you're seeing when it comes to leading teams today. So as you find innovative data and analytics leaders, and I imagine bringing them into your organization and others that you do work with, what, how do you really find and retain and really inspire teams to be productive together?
Yeah. I think, Courtney, if I want to go back to your first question first, a little bit adding a little bit more twist to the emerging trends is something along the lines of location based intelligence, or the location based data availability. What is a very interesting trend which I'm observing is we never have had a role in an organization which is like a chief data officer, chief data scientist. But I wouldn't be surprised to see in the next few years that this role become as equivalent as a CIO role in the company. And not to challenge any CIO, but but to say so that the data is becoming so much powerful, as in some saying, they also say that data is the new oil. What it means is data has a value, data has the money and stuff like that. And just want to take you back to the pandemic situation, where the real challenge was not to identify where the problem lies, but to really location based search where there could be a hotspots, right? And just imagine that a company who is probably going to expand their business in a certain area, right? What do they typically look for? What are their data points based on which they can examine what is the potential business revenue down the line if they expand on in a certain geography and whatnot. And a very good example, sometimes I say so, is Samsung, for example. They build their product models, and they do the location based the data analysis, the consumer insight analysis, and they launched their product with a almost a similar specification, but with a different variety of based on the location. It's not like maybe an Apple version 11 for
Right, right.
everywhere, and that is one of the way that they try to be competing with as good company as Apple, although their product could be look differently in a different perspective, from a quality, from the cost perspective, right? But that's where the emerging trend is in the location based data analytics. uh,
And there's no shortage. I mean, I'm a marketer, right? So the opportunity that that presents to deliver a better experience to potential customers or your own customers, not only can that be leveraged for just an overall better customer experience, it changes how you can reach out to people in general. And it's certainly something that I can imagine that a lot of organizations are really trying to take advantage of, particularly in consumer products, but really anywhere.
Absolutely, it is indeed. Yeah, it's in the CPG retail-based industry, and to be honestly speaking, nowadays, even like I was mentioning in the beginning, like the companies who were never thinking about going into the D2C space, they are kind of forced upon to really look into a different perspective, right? And even the B2B business model is getting more or like a D2C model, where they are being challenged from a technology perspective. How do they interact? And with the supply chain challenges along the lines of what happened in the pandemic, and even from a big economies like America and the China, challenges along the lines of semiconductors, the B2B business is becoming more D2C, in a way that they also want to know that their source provider, where they are at a given period in time in their inventory position, and that information could only lead them to deal with their the customers. Like, for example, if I talk about big box Costco, right? Unless they don't know where what is the transparent inventory position, and I'll explain what the transparent mean is. What the transparent inventory position of their business to business partner is, they are unable to tell to their customers who is coming to their sites and buy a specific brand of a product, right? um, and the underlying challenge of the transparency is thinking me as a the business provider, assumingly like me as a manufacturing company, if I don't have a visibility of where my raw source material is in the journey of coming to my company, I'm unable to provide that information to my B2B partner, right? For example, the Costco. And eventually, in the whole ecosystem, it becomes a true chaos, because your customer is waiting for a product, and you are unable to tell them what is going to be an ETA. Uh,
Yeah, I mean,
and
it's hard because people are used to an ETA. I mean, think about ordering something online. Maybe you don't expect it today, but you expect it in the near future. And then when said thing does not show up, you're going, where is this? I'm conditioned to think things are coming quickly. I mean, not only to mention in a manufacturing scenario where people are ordering servers, or they're building ecosystems for purposes of analytics, and they don't know when they can count on product being available. That's also a problem. It's just setting expectations is always both a big challenge and an opportunity for companies to be thinking about in those
yeah,
scenarios.
yeah. And imagine a complex, high, level projects, like as big as where you have to procure some electronic items, let's say computers, laptops and stuff like that. You could not build your project plan effectively unless you have those items shipped correctly based on the correct ETA. So just one example.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And it's like anything. Again, you can't be missing one piece. If the whole thing is waiting on one gate, whatever that is, it's all waiting. So, yeah, no, that's interesting. Well, to that end, when you see new technology, some of which you've talked about here, how do you assess whether or not something's going to be a fit for your organization and something that you want to sort of vet or rule out? Like, how do you assess red flags or really say, hey, this is new and innovative and I want to give it a try?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I mean, if I try to answer it, in three perspective, that would be my answer. How to really assess what could be a potential red flag. uh, and I think sometimes the red flags is also an opportunity. It's not necessarily a bad thing. You
It's
gotta.
a consideration. Yes.
Yeah, it is indeed. Yeah, you gotta know what is working and what may not work, right? So three things: process, people, and the technology, right? And we'll talk about the other question that you were talking about. How do I manage some distributed workforce environment, or what are some of my experiences along those lines? But these are the three things really, for any organization, in order to assess any new opportunity or a technology or whatnot, along those lines: the people, the process, and the technology. Talking about the people in particularly, um, I don't know how much time we have. I can speak for several hours on
Oh,
that
I
one.
know, I know. We'll give it the summary view. I feel like there's always one good nugget you see from people leaders that people can take. So maybe put it in the lens of, if there's one thing that you're thinking about, if it's one thing
Yeah,
relative to inspiring teams or managing them in this environment, what would you say is something that you think has really worked well for you?
yeah, I think my experience tells me is look upon an organizational hiring process, and half of the job is gonna be completed and done successfully if you have the right people for the right, opportunity or the job or a task. And this is a big challenge in the IT, in more particularly. The reason being is, we are a team of operational execution team, when it comes to the IT development and IT, emerging technologies and whatnot. And what becomes a real interesting challenge on a day-to-day basis is, again, going back to the hiring cycle, where you may bring the talent, but ultimately find that the talent has, either groomed too quickly, and they think that, this is an obsolete work that they are doing and they are looking for a new thing, right? Or maybe it's a completely misaligned strategy based on which we were trying to hire someone, right? Or talking about, along the lines of, offshore onshore model, where onshore model is more or like managing, leading, and not necessarily getting into the weeds of it, and asking the, the vendor partners or the consulting companies to deliver and execute in a fast based manner. However, they are not close to the business. They are not the ones who understand what could be your business pain points. Someone from the organization who is into the, the who has, taken the water from the from the company. I sometimes joke, knows better than, anyone else whether the water is going to be sweet or, salty,
Right,
uh,
right.
from a specific water cooler, because they know, because they have been into the company for so long, for quite some time, and someone who is just, coming in, nothing wrong with the skills, nothing wrong with the expertise, but they just don't know. Like, for example, if I'm going to,
Right, they don't know.
yeah,
Yeah.
to any other place, I may not be feeling so much comfortable in the beginning, and I just start doing the things based on, some wrong, quote and unquote, understanding. So that's,
Yeah, it's a really important point. Sometimes like doing the simplest things well feels like the thing you need to be thinking about. And in this case, you have new members of a team join, and you're right. You've already bet on their skill sets. They're going to be able to do half their job well because you've sort of been able to vet. You have the skills to do this job. But then to make room for those people to really thrive in your team, they're new, and you want to hear all the feedback, but you also want to realize you're also new. So if you're in the organization, you're going, this is great because there's fresh eyes on this problem, and you're learning things. And at the same time, you're going, but anything that's really significant here, we just need to take a quick pause and go, based on everything else we've learned in said company
yeah.
in however long a period of time, will this make sense for us, or is it a challenge? And there is a balance of that, right? You have all the new input while trying to balance it so that you're not going, oh, make a quick change here. Oh, no, no, we should do that. You can find yourself being all over the map, but keeping those ears open to that sort of perspective seems to always be really important, I guess is my point.
Yeah, it is indeed. It is very important, and, uh, I think if I have to pick up few things, it would be along the lines of, the people hiring process and whatnot. And also from a process perspective, if I want to mention one or two things, is opening too many initiatives at the same time. Or, you know, or-
Risky business doing that, right?
yeah, and the challenge is always the lack of number of resources, right? In any organization, especially when it comes to IT. And if you don't have enough time to focus on one thing, you could potentially keep a flaw in the solution designing, you know, and it's natural. And it is what the challenge is all about, you know, like how do you manage all those things by balancing everything, keeping everything in proportion, and you know, so many things. So it becomes very interesting, trust me, on a day-to-day basis.
I know it's giving yourself a little bit of room too, right? I mean, I'm a master of doing this. I think something's going to take, I'll give a simplest example, an hour. Nothing takes an hour.
Yeah.
So thinking about what should I take on with realistic expectation setting from your team to say, what is it really going to take to do this, allows you to prioritize in a way that is certainly more productive. I can, I absolutely agree with you there. Well, let's change gears a little bit because I want to make sure we have a chance to touch on a totally separate topic, which is when we have guests on the show, we like to try to cover some other things that you do outside of, we'll call it the day job.
Mhm.
And I know when you and I met before this session, we talked a little bit about this financial inclusion as a topic and something that you spend some time on. And I was wondering if you could just share a little bit of perspective for an audience that may or may not even know what that means. Maybe just help us understand, what does that mean and how could somebody learn more?
Yeah, so that's a great topic, you know, Courtney, and it's very close to my chest as well. Uh, Financial inclusion, for the ones who might be listening this very first time, is really empowering the people to have an equal opportunity to get the basics of the needs of, you know, the life, by giving them the equal chances or the opportunities. And what it means is, you know, think of what a financial inclusion truly means is, we live in a country like, you know, we have an access to banks, the digital accounts, right? And we never think about not having a bank account. You know, we do transactions based on the digital cards and whatnot, right? So everyone, you know, who is living in this country has pretty much an access to the financial bank accounts, right? Maybe 98 to 98.6 percentile, if I have the correct stats here. But in the developing countries, more specifically, you would be surprised to know that, you know, it's only the 20 percentile, and in some countries it is up to 50 percentile who has an access to the bank accounts or who have the bank digital accounts opened. And what we are missing is, and that's where, you know, the United Nations has a, you know, the goal of top 20 sustainability goal as well, to have the financial inclusion, you know, so as the world could be more nicer. uh, but the what it means is, you know, imagine a situation where people are not doing any digital or the record based financial transactions. They are just living on cash to cash transactions, right? They can't have an access to, you know, have the credit reporting, no structure to open up, you know, the business down the line because they don't have the credit history, so and so forth. And they are eventually going to be behind in the longer race of the journey of life, right, where everyone tries to be better and better day by day by doing the right things, right? So the financial inclusion to me is very very important topic, and we all of us have some sort of a responsibility to talk about and educate the people as well, you know, uh, to give the means to have the, you know, the financial recording of their transaction and stuff like that. And it goes into the, you know, the other technologies as well when it comes to the cool things like AI and machine learning. Don't want to scare the people who might be listening, because, you know, anti money laundering is one thing. When you don't have the, you know, the digital way of transaction, then there is a chance of doing the money laundering using the cash transaction and stuff like that, which is also called the hand to hand transaction, right? So the people who do not have means to open a bank account, you know, they try to do through the other means. So I think that's where, you know, the finca or the financial inclusion is coming into play, and the United Nations has a really good focus on that one.
Yeah, no, it's an important, and I mean, for those that want to learn more, certainly financial inclusion. Ahmed's talking about this as it's an important topic for the United Nations. It's an important topic that is a global topic that, each of us can learn a little bit more about. I mean, that 20% of people that are sort of financially uh, sophisticated is a very, very small number, and it's remarkable to hear it. But well, I mean, I would tell you, we really appreciate this dialogue today, and certainly, I always am very grateful for the opportunity because I get to learn something new and talk to awesome people. But uh, as we conclude, we always like to ask one. I don't want to call it a fun question because that would be like some crazy question. Where do you like to get your news? So, like anything, someone's like new trends, stuff you want to keep the pulse on. Where do you go? What's a go to for you?
Ah, great question. So my go-to is kind of a very traditional way. Many people might probably be doing it already. Going into the Gartner research reports, going into the conferences, connecting with the people, virtually, by following the influencers and looking into the, some IT blogs and stuff like that, or the emerging technologies. So that those are some of the ways I go, and try to seek the the trends as well. Nothing new, nothing crazy in that space. So
That is a totally good. That's a way I consume new information. I do that along with everything else. But there's a lot to be said in some of these guides and landscapes that, like, I always think, like, take away a nugget, maybe two nuggets. But um, well, Ahmed, this is an awesome conversation. You obviously have a lot of expertise. Hearing you talk about just what you think about when you think about how to manage teams and also functions to productivity, product development to productivity, and particularly given all of the changes and inputs relative to data and analytics and demands on the business today. It's really a perspective that we appreciate having. And I want to thank you for your time. And I want to thank our listeners for joining in.
yeah, no, thank you again, Courtney, for having me. I really appreciate this kind of, sharing the knowledge, learning from the experts as well. So thanks for reaching out to me, taking an interest. As much as I enjoyed, I hope that, the listeners and the watchers gonna enjoy as well. And if anyone has any, question and urge to reach out to me, they can always reach out to me through professional networking, sites like LinkedIn, and I'm happy to connect and, just collaborate with them.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that opportunity. And thanks everybody for joining us today. And we'll wrap at this point and have a great afternoon.